Welcome to Series 2 of the Bilingual Interpreting Examination Training provided by the Judicial Council of California. In this series, we'll talk about some tips and strategies to help you develop your interpretation skills. This will help you prepare for the Bilingual Interpreting Examination, or BIE, the exam that candidates are required to take and pass to become certified court interpreters in California. Be sure to watch Series 1, Overview of the Bilingual Interpreting Examination, before continuing with Series 2. Before discussing specific interpreting tips, let's go over a few things to keep in mind when preparing to become a court interpreter. First, it is important to remember that interpreting is a lifelong skill. As such, it must be continuously practiced, developed, and maintained over time. Developing good study and practice habits now will not just help you prepare to take the BIE, it will also help you continuously improve your performance and hone your abilities as an interpreter. Second, language is continually changing, and the terminology that may come up during a court proceeding is limitless. Should you go on to become a court interpreter, you will find that continued learning and practice are essential parts of the profession. Finally, keep in mind that court interpretation requires a complex set of skills. Therefore, it can take significant time to adequately prepare for the exam and be ready to work as a court interpreter. The tips provided in this video are just some of the techniques for building skills needed for court interpretation. To keep preparing, you should also review the additional resources and materials highlighted in the next video. Now, let's move on to some techniques for developing interpreting skills. We'll also look at some tips and strategies for studying independently for the BIE. Court interpreters must be able to fully capture spoken messages. This way, they can preserve the intended message and its meaning when interpreting. Therefore, it is essential for court interpreters to develop and practice effective listening skills. To develop effective listening skills, it is helpful to start by listening to material in the source language, the language being spoken. Try to focus on understanding the intended meaning of the message in that language. At this first stage, it is not about interpreting. It is about focusing on first understanding the content in the source language. After all, you can't interpret what you don't understand. Developing effective listening skills can include sharpening your ability to comprehend details of a spoken message. It can also include listening to speakers with different rates of speech and various accents in the source language. You can practice your listening skills through targeted listening comprehension exercises. Try listening to different sources of speech without taking notes. Then, ask yourself questions like, what happened? When, where, or what time did it occur? And who was involved? Try to recount as many details as you can about what you heard. If you can, listen to the source again to see if you remembered these details accurately. Note whether you missed any important information. Let's practice this skill. Listen to the following recording using effective listening.
In the news today, police are on the lookout for a man they say was caught trying to steal a Hyundai Sonata from the Super X gas station in High Rose County yesterday afternoon around 2 p.m. in broad daylight, while its owner was inside purchasing items from the convenience mart. Footage from the gas station security camera shows the would-be thief using a device to open the vehicle's driver's side door and sliding in behind the wheel. After several seconds, the man exits the vehicle and escapes on foot down Northwest Parkway, possibly in a failed attempt to make off with the vehicle. We spoke to Carmen Corrales, the vehicle's owner, shortly after the incident. Here's what she had to say.
Do you remember what happened? Where the incident occurred? What time? Who was involved? Practicing exercises like this on your own will help you continue developing effective listening skills. Akin to effective listening is reading comprehension. This skill is particularly helpful for sight translation. With sight translation, the interpreter first reads a document in the source language. This can be either English or the non-English language. The interpreter then performs an oral interpretation of the document into the target language. To sight translate, interpreters must have strong reading comprehension skills. This helps them understand the meaning and intent of the document even before attempting to interpret it. As with listening comprehension skills, it is important to develop reading comprehension skills that help you understand both the overall meaning of the source message as well as the details. Additionally, because court can include a wide range of written documents from letters written by families and friends, as well as police reports or other formal court documents, it is important to practice reading and understanding a variety of written content. To continue developing your reading comprehension skills, review documents of various types across many different and even unfamiliar topics. Focus on understanding the material and internalizing what it is saying. Ask yourself, what is this document about? What is its purpose? Are there any unfamiliar words? Analyzing the text can help you determine its central meaning. Let's practice this skill with the following exercise. Read the passage below and then answer the questions that follow. Can you recount the overall meaning of the passage? How about the details? Were there certain words that were unfamiliar to you? Continuing to read for content will help you develop your reading comprehension skills. Court interpreters are often called upon to provide simultaneous interpretation. This requires the interpreter to listen to a source message lagging only slightly behind the speaker while interpreting it into the target language. In other words, they are listening and interpreting at the same time. Developing simultaneous interpretation skills take a great deal of practice and time. One strategy to help develop the skills for simultaneous interpretation is to practice shadowing. Shadowing means listening to speech in one language and then repeating it back in the same language as it is being spoken. Like the exercises for listening and reading comprehension, shadowing does not include interpreting. It is an exercise that can help you begin to listen and speak at the same time, even if it is only in the same language. To practice shadowing, listen to a speech, television show, or radio program, or you can have a friend read a paragraph out loud. As you are listening, lag slightly behind and repeat everything being said as you continue to listen to the incoming message. You can practice this both in English and your non-English language. Recording yourself can also be extremely helpful when shadowing. This way, you can listen to your interpretation and compare what you said to the original content. Let's practice. Listen to the following recording in English. Repeat exactly what is said in English while the speaker is speaking.
A witness who was not testifying as an expert gave an opinion during the trial. You may, but are not required to, accept that opinion. You may give the opinion whatever weight you think is appropriate. Consider the extent of the witness's opportunity to perceive the matters on which the opinion is based, the reasons the witness gave for the opinion, and the facts or information on which the witness relied in forming that opinion. You must decide whether information on which the witness relied was true and accurate. You may disregard all or any part of an opinion that you find unbelievable, unreasonable, or unsupported by the evidence.
Once you are comfortable with this exercise, you can modify shadowing. This can help you gradually increase the cognitive load that you are able to handle. For instance, you might increase the time spent listening before you start repeating. You might also try completing other cognitive tasks while you listen, such as writing down the numbers 1 through 20. You might also write down the alphabet, your address, the days of the week, or any other information that helps you to challenge yourself while using this technique. In addition to simultaneous interpretation, court interpreters are expected to interpret consecutively. In consecutive interpretation, the speaker delivers 1 or 2 sentences and then pauses. The interpreter then converts these words into the target language during this pause. The speaker waits for the interpreter to convey the message before continuing with their speech. In other words, consecutive interpretation requires an interpreter to first listen to a portion of a message in one language and then interpret it into another. When interpreting consecutively, interpreters often use note-taking. This helps them recall what was said so they can produce an accurate interpretation. Note-taking involves jotting down anything that can help trigger the interpreter's memory of the source message. This may include words, phrases, abbreviations, numbers, and even symbols. Note-taking is not about writing down what was said verbatim. It is about writing down key elements of the source message that will help with recall. Note-taking is also unique to each interpreter. That is, each interpreter may use symbols or abbreviations that mean something specific to them. As with other skills discussed, note-taking can be developed over time through practice. Let's take a look at an example. Here are the notes an interpreter took for this testimony. To practice note-taking, try listening to short segments of speech and taking notes as you listen. Take your notes in the source language and then try to repeat back what was said in the same language. This will help you determine if your note-taking is serving as a memory aid or where you may want to keep developing this skill. Let's give it a try. Listen to the following speech and practice taking notes to remember what was said.
It was about 8:30 p.m. when I heard a knock at my door. I remember because I had just let my dog in and was cleaning up the kitchen from dinner. I went to the door and looked outside, but I didn't see anyone there, so I thought I was hearing things. But then I looked over to my left, towards the garage, and I see someone standing there. So I called out, "Who's there?"
How did you do? Did your notes help you remember the key points? How might you improve your note-taking skills? Many prospective court interpreters have had experience interpreting for friends and family members. However, court interpretation requires interpreting not only common everyday language, but also complex legal language. And as mentioned before, there is no limit to the subjects that may come up in a courtroom. Court interpreters are continuously exposed to different terminology across countless subject areas throughout their careers. Therefore, they must continually develop their vocabulary and breadth of knowledge of terms and their meanings in both English and the non-English language. One way to continue to develop vocabulary is to practice interpreting from various sources. Luckily, you can find sources from almost anywhere. For instance, you might refer to newspaper and magazine articles, letters, books, birth certificates, or other types of paperwork. You might find copies of actual transcripts used in court or use courtroom dramas on TV to use for practice. You can use the news and radio broadcasts. You can even enlist friends and family members to help you create materials of your own. We'll talk about how to do this effectively in the next video. The point is to practice interpreting as much as you can and with as many types of sources as you can. The more you practice, the more you will build up your vocabulary across many different fields. In addition to practicing interpreting with a range of different sources, it is helpful to build a personal glossary. A glossary is a tool that many interpreters use to help them interpret. It is a list of English and non-English words and phrases, along with any interpretations for those words or phrases. It may also include the meanings or definitions of the listed words. Some interpreters even include unacceptable interpretations that they may want to remember to avoid. Let's look at an example. In this example, you can see that the interpreter has made a list of terms along with acceptable and unacceptable interpretations. Context is also provided to help the interpreter select the appropriate equivalent. For many interpreters, glossaries serve as indispensable tools not just for unfamiliar words, but also as a reference for commonly used words that they can refer to for consistency. Glossaries are also living resources. This means they can be updated and developed over time as the interpreter comes across new words, phrases, or ways of interpreting them. When building a personal glossary, think about it in terms of building your buckets of knowledge. That is, you are creating a tool for expanding your knowledge and breadth of vocabulary across subject areas. You can create your own glossary in many ways, depending on what you prefer. For example, some interpreters use paper or index cards. Others build them electronically. You may even want to create multiple glossaries by subject area, such as medical, automotive, legal, or other categories of terms. You may also want to explore interpreter glossaries that are online. When determining the appropriate equivalent or equivalents, keep in mind the context in which the term is used. For example, the term vessel has a different meaning in a medical context than in a transportation or shipping context. Depending on this context and the non-English language, it may also have different interpretations. Therefore, it is important to research the term within the specific context to determine the accuracy of the selected equivalent. As you build your vocabulary of general, legal, and specialized terms, it is also important to pay attention to idioms and sayings, phrases that mean something other than the literal meaning of the combined words. Examples include pie in the sky or raining cats and dogs. In court, as with everyday speech, speakers might use phrases that cannot be interpreted word for word. If they did, they would lose meaning. For instance, does pie in the sky literally mean a baked good in the sky, or does it mean lofty? How would you interpret this? To practice this skill, locate as many idioms and sayings as you can in English and your non-English language. As you work with them, focus on the overall meaning of the phrase and not on the individual words. Before trying to interpret the saying, think of how you could convey the meaning of the phrase in another way in the source language. Once you have the source version, think of the interpretation. Does your interpretation have the same intent as the original saying? How can you avoid literal interpretations that would be incorrect? Make a list of these sayings and interpretations that you can refer to over time. Let's look at an example. Review these idioms and think about their intended meanings. Idioms are more than just the sum of their parts. Practice using this strategy to focus on the intent of common sayings rather than word-for-word interpretations. As you can see, you can practice interpreting using almost anything. However, for court interpretation, it is helpful to be in a courtroom to see and hear the action live. Considering this, you may want to observe actual court proceedings. This way, you can become more familiar with the type of language used in court, as well as how cases move through the court system. You may be able to attend your local court proceedings in person at your local court, or you might be able to watch pre-recorded or live-streamed proceedings from home. While observing, Pay close attention to the terms used, the flow of the proceeding, and even the steps in the case. Watch how people address the judge, how they interject, and where they sit or stand. And of course, observe courtroom protocols if you are present. Next, try to silently interpret to yourself while taking notes. Make note of anything that you find challenging or that you need to go back and research or define later. Finally, whether working to develop a glossary or practice your interpretation skills, another tip is to work with one or more study partners. Working together is a great way to support each other and gain valuable feedback. In fact, interpreters work together quite often in court. For instance, in some proceedings, interpreters may be assigned as part of an interpreting team. In this case, the interpreters count on each other to help look up unfamiliar terms, watch for inaccuracies, and provide corrections. Interpreters may also help each other prepare for certain cases so that there is consistency throughout the life of a case. Having an accountability partner is a great way to help you stay committed to practicing, improve your skills, and reconcile questions around proper interpretations of terms and phrases. It also helps you foster the commitment to elevating the profession of court interpreting. We hope this video has provided you with some interpretation strategies to help you prepare for the BIE and the profession. Remember to practice and develop your skills as often as you can. In the next video, we'll discuss some helpful resources you can use when practicing your interpreting skills.